Hey everyone, some buildings aren't just built, they're crafted, like art. These are structures where architecture becomes sculpture, and every detail is designed to inspire you. Today, I'm going to count down 15 entire buildings that were created as works of art. Starting with number 15, the TWA Flight Center at John F. Kennedy International Airport is one of the most recognizable pieces of mid-20th century architecture. It was designed by Finnish-American architect Eero Saarinen and was completed in 1962. It was created as the terminal for Trans World Airline and was intended to express the excitement of air travel during the jet age. Saarinen used reinforced concrete to form this sweeping, curved roof shell that appears to lift upwards, giving the entire structure the look of a bird in flight. The shape was intentional and documented in his original design commentary. This double-curved form was technically challenging for the time and required custom engineering and complex methods. Inside, the theme of fluid movement continued. The terminal's interior has no sharp corners and features flowing staircases and sunken lounges. Materials like red carpeting, custom ceramic tile, and expensive glass curtain walls were all chosen to make the experience feel futuristic and open. TWA's flight tubes, these long enclosed passageways leading to the aircraft, they were designed to heighten your anticipation and mimic the feeling of entering a spacecraft. The terminal, though, did struggle to adapt to changing requirements in aviation, like the introduction of larger jets and increased passenger volumes, and by 2001, operations had ceased here. But the building was preserved instead of being demolished. It was later incorporated into the TWA Hotel Complex, which opened in 2019 after a careful restoration. Today, this structure is widely cited as an early example of sculptural architecture, buildings designed primarily as works of art rather than functional structures. The building, of course, still draws attention from architects and historians for its unique form and the era that it represents. And despite changes to its use, it remains one of the clearest examples of an entire structure that was created with the primary intention of being visually expressive. Number 14. The Museum of Contemporary Art of Niterói. The Museum of Contemporary Art in Niterói is one of Brazil's most distinctive modern buildings. It was completed in 1996 and designed by architect Oscar Niemeyer in collaboration with structural engineer Bruno Contarini. Its most recognizable feature is that circular saucer-like form supported by a narrow cylindrical base. Niemeyer openly stated that the shape was meant to contrast with the natural landscape, and he rejected interpretations that it was inspired by a UFO, although that comparison is widely made by people who visit here. The building's about 16 meters tall and features a diameter of around 50 meters. The base is anchored deeply into the rock, which of course was necessary due to the steep slope here. The upper portion of the museum includes these large panoramic windows that wrap around the main exhibition hall, and this provided an uninterrupted view of the bay, which Niemeyer considered part of the experience. The red access ramp leading into the building is another defining feature. It wasn't simply decorative. He explained that the ramps create a more graceful and continuous sense of movement, which is a common theme in his work. Its construction required some great engineering to support that large cantilevered structure. He noted in interviews that the calculations were complex because the building's weight distribution isn't symmetrical. The reinforced shell had to be carefully shaped to support the stability of it, and all these details are part of published engineering studies and accounts from the project team. This building is considered an example of architecture as sculpture. The museum continues to operate and remains one of the most photographed landmarks in this region, with its documentation widely available through official museum publications and interviews. Its design is included in textbooks, and it is widely recognized as one of Niemeyer's most iconic works. Number 13. The Lotus Temple. The Lotus Temple, officially known as the Baha'i House of Worship in New Delhi, is one of the most widely recognized examples of modern architecture designed as a symbol. Completed in 1986, it was designed by Iranian architect Farbur Sabah, who documented the design process extensively. The temple's entire form is based around the shape of a lotus flower, which is significant in India, and it symbolizes purity and unity. The building consists of 27 freestanding marble-clad petals arranged in clusters of 3 to form 9 sides. These structural petals are real engineering elements too that aren't merely decorative. The structure is about 34 meters tall and is surrounded by 9 pools of water that help cool the building. This cooling method is described in technical studies about the temple's energy efficiency, and it was included in the original design intent. The white marble used for the exterior was sourced from a mountain region in Greece. That's the same source that used for several classical structures like the Parthenon. The interior can hold around 2,500 people, and all like the Baha'i houses of worship, the building contains no images, altars, or even religious icons. Its focus is on providing a quiet space for prayer and meditation. Sound engineers, too, worked on the acoustics, so even a whisper could be heard clearly across the hall. This design, though, does rely heavily on natural light. Sunlight enters through the gaps between the pedals and diffuses across the hall, eliminating the need for any elaborate artificial lighting during the day. The pedal system required some advanced framework and post-tension concrete, which had to be cast extremely carefully. Saba consulted with multiple engineering firms, and the project did take over a decade to fully conceptualize and build. And it's not simply shaped like a lotus, it uses geometry, structure, and light to replicate the feel and form in a verifiable engineered way. Today, it's one of the most visited buildings in India, and it's received numerous architectural awards. Number 12. The Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. The Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao opened in 1997. It's one of the most influential architectural works of the late 20th century. It was designed by Canadian-American architect Frank Gehry. This building is internationally recognized for its sculptural form, made of curving titanium panels. Now, these unconventional shapes weren't arbitrary. They were generated through computer-aided design software, originally developed for the aerospace industry. The exteriors consist of large, curving surfaces clad in titanium sheets only about 0.38 millimeters thick, and these sheets were selected because they react subtly to light, which gives the building a constantly changing appearance, depending on the weather and time of day. The structure beneath the cladding is made from steel frames and reinforced concrete, and each piece had to be shaped to match the curves defined by the digital model. Inside, the museum includes a 50-meter-long atrium known as the Flower, which links various galleries, and that shape of the atrium serves as a functional circulation space and an interior that's sculptural. It's a centerpiece. The galleries themselves range from traditional rectangular rooms to huge spaces that are designed specifically to house large-scale contemporary artworks. One example is the gallery that accommodates Richard Serra's The Matter of Time, a series of massive steel sculptures that require specific floor and movement conditions. The Guggenheim here in Bilbao has been credited with revitalizing the city's economy. It's a phenomenon widely referred to as the Bilbao effect, and while the degree of economic impact has been studied and debated, its role in increasing tourism is supported by official municipal tourism statistics. The museum is fully functional as an art institution, but its form itself is a major artwork. It's recognized by architects and scholars worldwide, and it's been featured in numerous academic publications, and it's considered one of the most thoroughly documented examples of a computer-generated sculptural architecture. Number 11. The Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles. The Walt Disney Concert Hall, completed in 2003, is one of the most studied examples of architecture designed primarily as a sculptural form. Created by architect Frank Gehry again, the same designer behind the Guggenheim in Bilbao we just talked about, this building is characterized by large, sweeping stainless steel panels that fold and curve in multiple directions. These forms weren't random, they were developed through an extensive modeling process and digital simulation. Since the hall was commissioned after a major donation from Lillian Disney, who wanted a performance venue that would stand out as a cultural landmark for the city. Early design iterations used stone cladding, but this was later replaced with stainless steel to achieve the reflective, continuous surface Gehry envisioned. The building's exterior originally had a high reflective finish, which caused an unintended glare and heat issue on nearby sidewalks and residential buildings. Inside, the concert hall features a vineyard-style seating arrangement where the audience surrounds the stage. The acoustics were developed in partnership with a renowned acoustician, Yasuhisa Toyota. And unlike many artistic buildings where form complicates the acoustics, Disney's hall interior was shaped specifically to enhance the sound quality. The walls and ceiling incorporate Douglas fir and oak surfaces, chosen for their acoustic characteristics and natural appearance. The organ was designed collaboratively by Gehry and organ builder Manuel Rosales. It's another unusual artistic element, with pipes arranged in irregular sculptural patterns rather than traditional rows. Today, the Walt Disney Concert Hall is widely regarded as one of the most important works in the United States. Its design is supported by extensive documentation, and its engineering is verifiable through public records. It's an artistic landmark and a fully functional concert venue for the Los Angeles Philharmonic. Number 10. The Hundertwasser House, Vienna, Austria. The Hundertwasser House. It's one of the most distinctive residential buildings in Europe, and a name that's really fun to say, and it was completed in 1985 and designed by Austrian artist Friedensreich Hundertwasser in collaboration with architect Josef Krawina. Unlike conventional buildings, this one was conceived as a direct expression of Hundertwasser's artistic philosophy, which was opposed to straight lines and uniformity. One cool element of the building is the integrated greenery. More than 200 trees and shrubs grow on the balconies, the roof, and terraces. And that wasn't symbolic. Hundertwasser believed that every tenant should have the right to plant their own tree tenant, and the building was engineered to support substantial vegetation. The windows are deliberately varied in size and shape, and in many cases, tenants were allowed to customize their window frames and surrounding areas, within specified limits, of course. And this approach did reflect Hundertwasser's belief in individual expression within architecture. The floors inside the building, too, are intentionally uneven, though they remain within safety standards. That design choice shows that Hundertwasser expressed that an uneven floor is a melody to the feet, which I guess is a pretty cool idea. The building has 52 apartments and several communal spaces, but it wasn't designed with conventional efficiency in mind. Instead, its purpose was to create a living sculpture. That concept required negotiations with the city of Vienna, which owned the land and ultimately approved the project. Hundertwasser's house quickly became a landmark after its completion. It drew visitors despite being an occupied residential property, and it is widely cited in studies as an example of applied expressionism. It's one of the clearest instances of a building that's constructed intentionally as a work of art, rather than a conventional piece of residential architecture. Number 9. The Sydney Opera House. I mean, come on, this one had to be on the list, right? The Sydney Opera House. It's one of the world's most recognizable buildings, noted for its sculptural form and its engineering complexity. It was designed by the Danish architect Jørn Utzon. It was officially opened in 1973 after a long and highly documented construction process. It was selected through an international competition held in 1956, where Utzon's entry stood out for the bold shell-like roof structure. These shells aren't arbitrary shapes, they're based on sections of a sphere, and before that solution was discovered, the roof was considered almost impossible to construct. Its location on Bennelong Point was chosen because of its visibility from Sydney Harbour. This design deliberately took advantage of the surrounding water. The roof shells are made of precast concrete ribs covered with over 1 million glazed ceramic tiles that were produced in Sweden. Now, they're not pure white, they consist of a subtle chevron pattern that reduces glare while maintaining a bright appearance. And of course, the Opera House itself consists of multiple performance venues, including the concert hall, the Joan Sutherland Theatre, a small studio and rehearsal space. But one of the major challenges during construction was the need to create interior spaces after the roof shells had already been designed. This did lead to delays and some budget increases, all documented within government reports, and Utzon resigned from the project in 1966 after disputes with the New South Wales government, and the interiors were completed by different architects without his involvement. The Sydney Opera House is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's known for its innovative geometry and its artistic ambition. Its influence on architecture is significant, particularly in the field of expressive structural design. Every major aspect of the building, from the spherical shell geometry to the tile cladding, the engineering challenges and the political conflict too, it's extensively documented in construction archives, and as a result, it's a verifiable example of a building conceived and executed as an artistic work on an architectural scale. Number 8. The Casa Batll, Barcelona, Spain. The Casa Batll, located in Barcelona, is one of architect Antonio Gaudi's most celebrated works. It was originally constructed in 1877, but Gaudi was commissioned by industrialist Josep Batlle in 1904 to redesign it completely. The result was completed in 1906. Its facade is its most recognizable feature. It's covered in a mosaic made from broken ceramic tiles. These are arranged in gradients of blue, green, and gold, and this method was common in Gaudi's later works and allowed him to create irregular, shimmering surfaces. The windows and balconies feature curved bone-like shapes which have led to the common nickname, the House of Bones. These forms aren't symbolic of anything specific in the official documentation, but they do reflect Gaudi's general interest in natural organic shapes rather than straight lines. The roof is another cool element. It's got a spine-like ridge that's covered in scaled ceramic tiles. The roof structure includes a parabolic arch system that was innovative for its time. Those arches, present throughout the attic, allowed Gaudi to reduce weight while creating flowing interiors. Inside, Casa Batll uses continuous curves, natural light wells, and carefully engineered ventilation systems. Gaudi designed the central light shaft to taper slightly towards the bottom, with the tile colors transitioning from darker blues at the top to lighter tones near the base. That arrangement ensured even light distribution, which was an effect analyzed in multiple architectural studies. The wooden doors, stained glass, and hand-carved railings were produced by local craftsmen under Gaudi's supervision, and many of those pieces still exist. The building does also incorporate some functional innovations. For example, the windows on the main floor use a sliding mechanism that was documented in Gaudi's hardware specs. The interior layout was designed to improve airflow without mechanical systems, relying on documented calculations for cross-ventilation. And since its completion, though, it's undergone several restorations, all thoroughly recorded, and in 2005 it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site as part of Gaudi's broader architectural legacy. Casa Batll remains one of the clearest examples of architecture as art, not because of symbolic interpretation, but because the aesthetic choices, the structural solutions, and material innovations here were intentionally merged into a cohesive vision. Moving on to number 7, the Cathedral of Braslia. The Cathedral of Braslia. It was inaugurated in 1970 and is one of Oscar Niemeyer's most striking works. It serves as a Roman Catholic cathedral for Brazil's capital city, and it forms part of the larger civic complex. Its most defining feature is that hyperboloid structure made from 16 identical concrete columns. Each one weighs about 90 tons, and it curves outwards before tapering inward to the top. The shape is often interpreted by visitors as resembling hands that reach towards the sky, or maybe a crown of thorns. It was explained directly by Niemeyer as an exploration of pure structural form rather than a literal symbolic shape. The spaces between the concrete columns are filled with large glass panels. Now, the original glass installed in the early 1970s was a simple transparent system, but it was replaced in 1990 with colored stained glass designed by artist Marianne Peretti. The glass is composed of blue, green, white, and brown hues arranged in abstract patterns. It allows natural light to wash the inside, eliminating the need for any heavy artificial lighting during day. The entrance to the cathedral is placed below ground level. Visitors walk down a darkened tunnel before emerging into the bright interior, which was a deliberate contrast documented in Niemeyer's design notes. Inside the nave, suspended angel sculptures created by Alfredo Cecchiati hang from nearly invisible steel cables. This cathedral is one of the most heavily studied buildings in South American modernism. This innovation here and the sculptural form and the extensive documentation surrounding its creation make it a clear example of a building designed as a work of art from the outset, rather than a simply functional religious structure. Number 6. The Selfridges Building. The Selfridges Building, part of the Bullring Shopping Center in Birmingham, opened up in 2003, and it quickly became recognized as a major work of contemporary architecture. Designed by the architectural firm Future Systems, led by Jan Kalipke and Amanda Levitt, the building stands out for its curving organic form, covered in thousands of aluminum discs. Its shape was inspired in the 1960s of a Paco Rabanne dress made of connected metal discs. That was a comparison confirmed by Levitt in multiple interviews, but the facade consists of 15,000 anodized aluminum discs attached to a blue insulating membrane mounted over a sprayed concrete shell. The structure beneath the facade uses a combination of steel and concrete to create a large, flowing interior space without any visible support columns, which would interrupt the retail layout. The curving exterior shell is both an artistic gesture and a protective enclosure, and although it has no symbolic meaning beyond its form, Future Systems emphasized that the building was intended to stand as a sculptural landmark within Birmingham's redeveloped city center. The building includes several large retail floors, storage spaces, loading bays, and back-of-house areas typical for major department stores. However, the interior was initially kept neutral to contrast with the bold exterior. Those aluminum discs, they were manufactured by a company that specialized in aircraft components, and during construction, the building required specialized scaffolding due to the irregular curves. Since its opening, the building's become one of the UK's most photographed modern buildings. It represents a clear case where the architects prioritized sculptural form and visual impact over conventional commercial architectural norms. Number 5. The Sagrada Famlia. The Sagrada Famlia is one of the most thoroughly documented examples of a building conceived as a work of art on an urban scale. Designed by renowned architect Antonio Gaudi, construction began in 1882 and it continues today, and that makes it one of the longest-running architectural projects in history. Gaudi took over the project in 1883 and he transformed the original neo-Gothic plan into a far more complex design. One of his central innovations is his use of catenary curves and hyperboloids. These are forms that appear frequently in Gaudi's surviving models. These geometries are not aesthetic guesses either. They were based on physical hanging model experiments that he used to solve structural loads. The basilica is composed of 3 major facades: Nativity, Passion, and Glory. Each facade has its own documented artistic program. The Nativity facade, completed largely during Gaudi's lifetime, features highly detailed stone carvings of plants, animals, and biblical scenes. The Passion facade, built much later, was based on Gaudi's models and surviving notes. It uses stark, angular sculptures by artist Josep Maria Subarac. The contrast here is intentional, and it's recorded in both Gaudi's design notes and construction interpretations. The nave's columns, they branch like trees, which is a concept that was documented directly in Gaudi's sketches. Extensive analysis by architects and engineers show that these branching supports distribute weight efficiently while also creating the visual impression of a stone forest. Light plays a major role in the stained-glass windows, designed by Joan Villagrau beginning in the 1990s. They're installed according to documented guidelines that specify color transitions and light intensity, plus thematic groupings, which results in an interior atmosphere that's shaped by natural illumination. Above the nave, those towers, they represent another artistic challenge. Gaudi planned 18 towers of varying heights to symbolize the apostles, evangelists, the Virgin Mary, and Christ. These heights had arrangements precisely documented in his surviving plans. The central tower is dedicated to Jesus Christ, and it's still under construction. It's designed to reach over 170 meters high, a figure that's verified in his official documents. If it's completed as planned, it will be the tallest church tower in the world. The project remains under continuous study because it does integrate art, structure, and engineering in ways that were unprecedented when it was originally conceived. It's one of the world's clearest cases of where an entire building, not just the decorative elements, was designed as a multi-generational work of art. Number 4. The Impressionist Sainte-Chapelle. The chapel known as the Notre-Dame du Haut in Ronchamp, often referred to as Ronchamp Chapel, is one of the most influential works by Swiss-French architect Le Corbusier. Completed in 1955, it's a prime example of a building that was conceived primarily as an artistic object rather than a conventional liturgical structure. It sits on a hilltop that had religious significance for centuries, and since its completion, it's become one of the most studied religious structures of the 20th century. This chapel, the Palais Idal du Facteur Cheval. So I butchered that name, but the Palais Idal is one of the most extraordinary examples in the world of an entire building created as a personal work of art, constructed over 33 years by a single man with no formal training. It's located in a rural village in southeastern France. It was built by Ferdinand Cheval, a postman who began the project in 1879 and completed it in 1912. Everything known about the palace is supported by Cheval's own notebooks, letters, and interviews, and municipal records, which makes it one of the most thoroughly documented outsider architecture projects ever created. His inspiration began with a single stone. During one of his daily mail routes, typically about 30 kilometers on foot, he tripped on a rock with an unusual shape. This incident is verified in his handwritten notes. He was fascinated by its texture and form. He brought it home, and over the following days he began noticing other unusual stones along his path. Soon he carried baskets and wheelbarrows with him on his routes to collect stones of various shapes, colors, and densities. He would return home after long working days and spend evenings mixing lime, cement, and mortar by candlelight to build this structure. Now, the palace itself is about 26 meters in length and up to 10 meters in height. Doesn't resemble any one architectural tradition. Instead, it's an intentional fusion of global styles. Chapel took inspiration from postcards, illustrated newspapers, and natural rock formations he encountered during his daily routes. He combined elements that he admired: Hindu temples with domes and minarets, alpine chalets, and even medieval fortresses. These influences are traceable to objects and images Chapel mentioned in his own journals, or owned copies of during his life. One cool feature is the facade that has carved features Chapel called the Three Giants. He explained that these figures represented leadership, resistance, and intelligence. These carvings still stand, and they're frequently referenced in academic studies which analyzes the palace. The carvings of animals, though, including ostriches, lions, bears, elephants, and even fantastic creatures, are all documented through early photographs taken before Chapel's death. Chapel also embedded philosophical messages directly into this architecture. Hundreds of inscriptions carved into the surfaces reflect his personal thoughts about perseverance, nature, and time. These inscriptions serve as a primary source evidence of his intentions and provide scholars with an insight into his worldview. Many messages emphasize determination, such as the dream of one man, what man can imagine, man can create, and I want to prove what willpower can achieve. Every one of these phrases appears in his original carvings or writings. The interior contains narrow passageways, galleries, and small chambers. Some parts resemble caves, while others mimic the architectural patterns Chapel admired from distant cultures. He built ladders, ramps, and small stairways into the structure to allow visitors to climb or descend through different sections. He often worked with crude tools, or even used his hands to sculpt wet cement, shaping it around the stones to create these complex forms. The Palais Idal is often described as one of the earliest and most complete examples of naive architecture, a term used to describe work created outside academic or professional circles. But despite that term, there's nothing accidental or unclear about its purpose. His writings make it obvious that he intended the entire structure to be a personal masterpiece. Every stone he picked up, every carving he made, and every inscription he wrote was part of a deliberate, lifelong artistic vision. Number 2. The Grande Arche de la Dfense. The Grande Arche de la Dfense. It's one of the most ambitious achievements of the late 20th century. It was conceived not just as an office building, but as a geometric artwork. It was completed in 1989 as part of President François Mitterrand's Grands project. It was intended to anchor the modern business district of La Défense while extending the historic axis of Paris, a straight line connecting the Louvre, the Champs-Élysées, and the Arc de Triomphe. The government archives confirmed that this alignment wasn't symbolic, but a mathematically precise urban design mandate. The Grand Arc acts as a contemporary counterpart to the Arc de Triomphe, deliberately opening outward instead of inward, which symbolized humanitarian openness rather than military victory. All the planning competition entries, the correspondence, and design documents are preserved in French National Archives, which provide a detailed record of the building's conception. Von Spreckelsen, the designer, proposed a perfect cube, though later adjustments made it slightly rectangular with a massive hollow center. The final structure measures about 110 meters high and 112 meters wide and about 108 meters deep. Unlike traditional arches, the interior void is open from the top to bottom and front to back, framing the historical axis and allowing the panoramic views through the structure. A significant portion of the total volume of it, about 40%, is empty space, which is one of the building's defining decisions. The cladding on the exterior consists of more than 35,000 square meters of white Carrara marble and glazing, and records show that the marble slabs were tested under quality standards to ensure durability against pollution and temperature change. The facade panels are mounted on a secondary metal structure which was designed to accommodate expansion and contraction without cracking. Structurally, the building relies on reinforced concrete cores and a network of steel beams to carry loads around the central void. The enormous roof slab, which spans over the void, required specialized construction methods. Engineers designed an internal steel space frame to handle the stresses created by the absence of supporting columns in the center. But the Grand Arche functions as a working office building. It houses government agencies and private organizations. The interior has offices, conference halls, and various service spaces arranged within the two massive vertical slabs. However, the rooftop, originally designed as a publicly accessible terrace, became one of the most notable features. It offered amazing views over Paris, and it housed exhibition spaces and restaurants. Over the decades, the Grande Arche has become a central symbol of this district, appearing in urban planning studies and architectural journals. While von Spreckelsen passed away before the building was fully completed, his documented design intentions guided the final stages under architect Paul Andrew. Today, it remains one of the clearest examples of architecture conceived as functional infrastructure and large-scale sculpture. The building is not only a major Parisian landmark, but it's an embodiment of the idea that a structure can be created as a monumental work of art. Number 1. The Fallingwater House. Fallingwater. It's one of the most thoroughly documented examples of a building created as a complete work of art. Designed by American architect Frank Lloyd Wright and completed in 1937, this house was commissioned as a weekend retreat for Edgar J. Kaufman and his family. Wright's original drawings, letters, and engineering reports survive in detail, and they show that the integration between architecture and landscape wasn't symbolic or accidental. It was the guiding principle of the entire project. The most distinctive aspect of Fallingwater is that relationship with the waterfall at Bear Run. The Kaufman family expected Wright to place the house where it would overlook the waterfall, but instead he anchored it directly over it. And this decision is confirmed in Wright's correspondence, where he wrote that the family should, quote, live with the waterfall, not just look at it. Well, the house was positioned so the sound of the stream flows through every room. The structure is defined by a series of bold, reinforced concrete cantilevers that project outwards above the water. Those cantilever form terraces, balconies, and roof lines that do seem to float above the land. Over time, though, concerns about the long-term performance of the cantilevers did lead to some extensive engineering studies and a major reinforcement project completed in the early 2000s, where steel tensioning cables were added to stabilize the structure. Inside, the house maintains that same philosophy of connection with nature. Stone floors are made from locally quarried rock and are intentionally uneven in some places to resemble the surrounding terrain. Built-in furniture, designed by Wright, ensures nearly every piece fits exactly into its intended space. Windows are large, and they open outward with minimal framing. That's a signature of Wright's work. The windows were designed to pivot outward and create a natural ventilation, a feature that appears throughout Wright's drawings and specifications. One cool feature, though, is the way that the stairway leads directly from the living room down to the stream. The stairway's not decorative either. It was intentionally included to allow the family easy access to the water. But every major material in the house was selected to blend in with the surroundings. The concrete was tinted a warm, light ochre to match the local stone. The steel used for window frames and railings was painted a Cherokee red, which was a color Wright used frequently. The Western Pennsylvania Conservancy, which has managed the property since 1963, has documented decades of conservation research. Despite its age, though, and structural complexity, it retains most of its original materials and appearances. Today, Fallingwater is recognized worldwide as a masterpiece of organic architecture. It's listed as part of the UNESCO World Heritage designation for Frank Lloyd Wright's works, with detailed reports verifying its authenticity. But every aspect of Fallingwater, from the cantilevered terraces to the stone hearths, window systems, and response to the natural land, is supported. It remains a rare example of a home that's designed and built as a total work of art, where the architecture and environment are inseparably intertwined.